When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Do you have a dark curiosity? Heart Starts Pounding, Horrors, Hauntings, and Mysteries is a weekly podcast hosted by me, Kaylin Moore. Each week, I'll take you on a dark journey through terrifying true urban legends, bizarre true crime cases, chilling tales of backwoods horror, and more. So if you're looking to join a passionate community of the darkly curious, check out Heart Starts Pounding on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, stay curious.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
I was about to close my eyes when I saw it. It was the silhouette of what looked like a man, and he was standing right outside the window.
He was staring at me. I saw him watching me try to exit through the wrong door. I was so freaked out.
With the creepiest smile I'd ever seen and an unnervingly calm voice, he said he was a friend of mine. He was going to take me home.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello, and welcome back to the show. This week, we have 4 stories that will make you shudder. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. In our first story, a strange man lurks outside. Narrated by Sinn from Reddit user Expected Texas 52.
I grew up in a village called Luther, Michigan. It's within the Manistee National Forest, and it's a really small place. The population of the village was something like 300 people. My grandpa and I lived a bit outside of it, in a cabin he built deep in the woods. It was a small place, just 1 bedroom, and to reach it, you had to drive down this 2-mile 2-track through the forest. All that to say, there really wasn't any chance of us ever getting unexpected visitors. Not people we didn't know, anyway. When I was only around 7 or 8 years old, like I said, my grandpa's cabin wasn't big, and there was just 1 bedroom, so my bed was in the living room. There was this giant window looking out over the patch of forest that passed for our front yard. During the day, you could see everything through that window. The driveway, the shed, my grandpa's project cars and trucks, all the various farming equipment he had out there. But at night, all of it vanished. Except for the light coming from our house, it was pitch black out there. So from the inside, nighttime looked like someone had thrown a dark blanket over the entire house. Space in the cabin was at a premium, so my bed was positioned right up against this big window. That meant I slept most nights curled up with my back against the glass. Even as a kid, I was a heavy sleeper, so I'd always sleep through till morning. Our nighttime routine was that I'd say my prayers and get ready for bed. Then my grandpa would tuck me in and sit down by the fire to read his Bible. He usually read until I fell asleep, then took himself to bed in his room. This particular night was no different. At first. He got in his chair, took out his Bible, and started to read while I drifted off. I must have only been asleep for about 3 or 4 hours before I woke up. I could see my grandpa still in his chair, asleep with the Bible open in his lap. Trying to get comfortable, I rolled onto my other side to settle back down. That meant I was facing our front window. I was about to close my eyes when I saw it. It was the silhouette of what looked like a man, and he was standing right outside the window. It was really incredibly dark in those woods, so for me to be able to see anything, it would need to be just inches from the glass. At first, I thought I was seeing things. I blinked a few times, but the shape was still there. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was racing. My little kid brain thought that if I didn't move, whoever or whatever was out there would think I was asleep and just leave. But the shadow didn't leave. As my eyes slowly adjusted to the dark, I started to make out more details. It was unmistakable. A man. I could see the stubble on his chin, which was practically pressed up against the glass. And still I didn't move. But he did. The man crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. He was looking right at me, and the image of his eyes looking at me through the glass broke the spell over me. I started crying loudly. I was practically convulsing with fear by the time my grandpa woke up a few seconds later. He stood up out of his chair, and the man on the other side of the glass took off, melting into the dark of the woods. My grandpa came over to me and started to rub my back, asking me what was wrong. I got a few words out in between sobs, trying to explain what I'd seen. Now, I had a bit of a rough childhood, and I knew, and my grandpa knew, that if I lied about things, I was going to get my ass beat. So that's how he knew that I wasn't making this up. He turned on the light in the living room, went into his bedroom, and came back out with a shotgun. He then opened the front door and strode out into the night. He was gone for no more than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. When he came back, he looked genuinely spooked. And listen, my grandpa was a Green Beret in Vietnam. He was not the kind of man to scare at all, but he looked freaked out. He came over to me and said he'd stay up with me. Then he turned on the TV and let me watch all night, which I was never allowed to do. The whole time he sat facing the front door, still holding his shotgun. The morning came, and the first thing he did was put curtains up over all the windows. Then he went outside to investigate in the daylight. There were footprints in the dirt, leading from that front window and deep into the woods. After that, my grandpa didn't let me play alone where he couldn't see me, and he moved my bed away from the window. About a week or so later, my grandpa and I were watching the news after dinner, and there was a story about a recently escaped prisoner who was captured near Becky Trail, just outside Luther. The 2-track that led to our cabin? That was Becky Trail. This guy had been hiding out in a hunting shack about a mile away from where we were. And for one terrifying night, he'd been watching me sleep.
Welcome back, listeners. In our next story, a young woman finds herself trapped in the gaze of a stranger. Narrated by Nadirah Muhammad from Reddit user Sound System.
It's been almost 24 hours since this happened. I can't stop thinking about it. Last night, I was alone in an all-night fast food joint. My partner and I had driven to this small town about half an hour outside of our city. It's a small town, like Population of 1,800, small. And there are about 8 churches there, which feels important to note because I'm a 26-year-old woman who wears a hijab. So anyway, my partner had some errands to run in the area, and we thought it would be a nice excuse to enjoy the drive there and back with him. I accompanied him on the trip and opted to chill out at this restaurant while he did his thing. I got there around 6:30 p.m., ordered a drink, and grabbed a booth by a window so I could do some journaling. I'd been sitting there for about an hour when a car pulled into the parking spot right beside the window I was sitting at. By this stage, I was deeply immersed in what I was writing, and I only noticed the car because I stopped to sip my tea and stretch my hand. What was strange was that the car seemed to be running. At the very least, its headlights were still on. But even then, I didn't pay it that much attention. I just kept writing for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. Then, the car flashed its high beams at me. That's when I finally turned to look at the car. I thought maybe it was my partner waiting for me. When I saw that it wasn't his car, I just went back to my writing. Looking back, my guess is that the flash was a test to see if I was paying attention to my surroundings. But in the moment, I just thought it was a little strange. Nothing to be worried about, though. A little while later, I became aware of a dude standing between my booth and the counter, where someone might naturally stand and wait for their order. It was odd, though. I never noticed him actually pick up any food or drinks the whole time he was standing there. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. I finished the paragraph that I was writing and glanced up at him. He was staring at me. Like, totally staring. And he had this fucked up way of looking at me, like I was a stain on a brand new pair of slacks. Like he was angry at me. But his face looked utterly devoid of emotion. Still, I couldn't help feeling that his stare was definitely hostile. After a couple of seconds of me looking back at him, he turned around to face the counter. I went back to writing in my journal because I knew my partner would show up soon. This dude kept hanging around, though. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see him turn to face me again. Eventually, he moved to the other side of the restaurant, where he was closer to being in my blind spot. A few minutes later, my partner texted to say he was on his way, so I started packing my things. I moved pretty quickly because there was no way I was sticking around any longer than I had to with this guy hanging around. I noticed him start slowly moving into the vestibule between the outdoor doors and indoor doors, and I could feel him watching me as I threw my garbage in the trash. I sat back down for a moment and checked my phone, sneaking a glance over at him. He stood with his back to me, but he had his head turned around to look over in my direction. I grabbed my parka and purse, at which point he stepped outside and stood there, right in front of the doors. He was blocking one door, but he left just enough room for someone to get past him. There was no shot I was getting that close to him. Instead, I went to the back of the restaurant and into the bathroom, and I swear I caught him turning his head towards me when I started walking away. While I was in the cubicle, my partner texted me that he was there. I said I'd be right there and I was just washing up. I left the bathroom and this guy is back inside, facing the doors like he was waiting for a ride or something. I walked right past him, into the vestibule, and he glared at me as I passed. Approaching the exterior doors, I saw him watching me try to exit through the wrong door. Normally that would have felt embarrassing, but I was so freaked out that I didn't care. I made it outside and I could see his face turning to watch me as I walked past the car that had flashed its high beams at me. I assumed the car was his. My partner was parked one spot over from it, and I let out a sigh of relief when I got inside. Now, my partner happened to have backed into his spot. So from where he was standing, the guy inside couldn't see who was driving. He could just see that I got into someone else's car. For the first time since I first caught him staring inside, I looked right at him from the passenger seat. I wanted him to know I had noticed him. He was still staring at me. He didn't blink. We pulled out onto the highway and turned past the restaurant, where the dude was still staring from that front window. Like he was far enough away I couldn't see him well, but I could see that his face was turned, hands still in his pockets, like they had been the whole time. And again, at no point did I see him holding even a coffee cup, just standing there for half an hour or so, watching me. I thought that was the end of it, but a minute later, a car slowly approached us on the highway. It began tailing us, close enough that anyone else would have just passed. They wanted us to know they were there, following. We didn't know what to do. We went back and forth trying to make a decision, but as soon as we left town, the car turned off the highway and vanished into the night. I can't be sure, but after giving it some thought, I suspect that this guy saw me sitting there from outside the restaurant and flashed his high beams at me to see how much attention I was paying. Then he waited for me to leave, seeing if I would get into my own car and drive away alone. It would have been so easy for him to intercept me if my partner wasn't there and I was trying to get into my own car alone. And with his car parked so close to the front door, it wouldn't have been difficult for him to pull me into the vehicle with him. From where he was standing just inside and outside of the doors, he could see the staff behind the counter, down the hallway to the bathrooms, the parking lot, and the turn-in from the highway. He could also see if there was anyone else in the dining area, and I don't think there was. And I think that maybe he tailed my partner's car long enough to catch a glimpse of the driver's general shape and size, and roughly confirm whether the driver was a male. Then again, maybe he was following us long enough to memorize our license plate, or he wanted to make sure we were leaving town. I hope I never find out the truth. Whatever he was up to, I'm so thankful I didn't leave alone.
Next, we'll head to China, where an American visitor finds herself moments away from a nightmare. Narrated by Allison Brody, from Reddit user KittyCat3210.
I spent last summer as a foreign exchange student in Beijing. I was only 17, but I really felt invincible. I lived by myself and was always venturing out into the city alone to explore and practice my language skills. Nothing bad had come even remotely close to happening to me, and I didn't see a possibility that anything ever would. Granted, China is generally a safe country, so I didn't think I had anything to fear. Turns out I was very, very wrong. On the day in question, I'd been on a class excursion since the early morning. We'd all been walking around in the brutal summer heat for hours and were utterly exhausted. When the activity was done, I practically crawled to the subway to find my way home again. That's when I first noticed him. Standing in line for the train, I saw a man staring at me. I was a foreigner in Beijing, so this was pretty normal. People there stared at foreigners all the time because we were rare and stood out like a sore thumb. I didn't think anything of it and kept on waiting. When the train arrived, I got on and sat down. The staring man took a seat on the other side of the carriage. We were far apart, but our seats were facing each other, so I knew that he was still watching me. I was so tired though, and sitting down felt so good after the big day that I kind of just ignored him. After a minute or two, the movement of the train and the steady flow of people getting on and off had me nodding off. I don't know how long I slept for, but the announcement we were arriving at the station woke me up. I looked around to check we hadn't passed my stop and saw the man was now sitting right next to me. I was still in that fuzzy haze of being half asleep, so I barely even registered that this was weird. As the train started moving again, my eyes felt heavy and I let them close. As I did, I felt a hand gently guiding my head down onto the shoulder of the man next to me. I definitely thought that was weird. But it almost felt like a dream, so I didn't resist. I was asleep again for a while, I don't know how long. But when I woke up the second time, it wasn't to a station announcement. I could feel a pair of hands pulling me to my feet and pushing me to walk. As I shook my head to fully wake up, I saw that we weren't on the train anymore. This man had walked me out of the carriage and onto the platform. Now he was dragging me towards the exit. Now that I'd finally processed what was happening, I planted my feet and pushed the man away from me. I asked what the hell he was doing. With the creepiest smile I'd ever seen and an unnervingly calm voice, he said he was a friend of mine. He was going to take me home. Then he reached out to grab me by the shoulders, but I stepped back. I told him I wasn't going anywhere with him and that he needed to leave me alone. He wrapped one of his hands around my arm and tried to pull me to the stairs, insisting that we knew each other, that we were good friends. Adrenaline now pulsing through me, I yanked my arm out of his grip and told him that if he didn't leave right now, I would call a security guard and they'd call the police. His smile slipped from his face when I said that. He curled his lips, his eyes suddenly looking icy as he looked me up and down. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. After I caught my breath, I worked out where I was and waited for the next train to arrive. I rode the whole way home standing up with my eyes wide open, terrified to go back to sleep. I didn't feel quite so safe on my own after that night.
We'll be right back. In our final story, a woman wonders, will this Uber be my last? Narrated by Danielle Patterson, from Reddit user High to a Record.
This happened just before Christmas. I was visiting my mom for the holiday, and I didn't have a car. So I had a friend drop me at the closest mall so I could get some shopping done. After a few hours, I was ready to go home, so I pulled up Uber and ordered a car to take me back to my mom's place. Now, my mom lives in a somewhat rural area. It's not quite the boonies, but there are long stretches of open highway surrounded by fields on the way to her neighborhood. There are plenty of different ways to get there from the mall. All of them are well-trafficked, paved roads. The trip should take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and it should be supremely uneventful. Not this day. After a short wait out in the cold, the car pulls up. I put my shopping bags in the trunk, and I get into the back seat. The driver is a man in his 50s or 60s, and he seems real nice. He's one of those talkative Uber drivers who ask me what I do for work, where I'm headed today, what my plans are for the holidays. It all seems deeply normal. Eventually, the conversation fizzles out. I'm grateful. I've just spent a couple of hours fighting holiday crowds at a busy mall, so I'm a little peopled out. I put my headphones in and listen to some quiet music, happy to just enjoy the drive. Because I'm staring out the window, I notice pretty quickly that we're taking a route I've not used before. And soon enough, we turn onto an extremely rural road with no end in sight. It's at this point that I start to get nervous. I pause my music and pull up the Uber app to check the GPS. I keep one eye on the map as we drive down this road for a few more minutes. We pass a couple houses and a few horses standing in fields, but no other cars and not a single person. I take my headphones off and tuck them into my bag, now fully alert, and making a show of turning my head from side to side so that the driver can see I'm paying attention to where we are. I look down at the map and feel my heart rate start to pick up. Up ahead, all I can see is a dead end to this road. A part of me hopes I'm being silly, that the driver will just turn around once the road runs out and take us back the way we came to find a different route. But that's not what happens. As we're reaching the final stretch of paved road, we slow down and make a right onto what looks like a dirt driveway. That's when I finally speak up. I ask the driver why we're pulling in here. He shrugs big enough for me to see it from the back and says that the GPS brought us this way. I shake my head and tell him that I'm not comfortable going this way and ask if we can return to the main road. He points in front of the car and says that the road is just up here. I sit back in my seat, my gaze flitting about as we move further along the dirt track. We pass behind a few houses and are eventually surrounded by trees and thickets. It feels like we're on some kind of ATV trail, but it feels all wrong being here in the back of some sedan with a guy I've just met. At this point, I'm getting ready to jump out of the car. My phone's in my hand and I'm wondering who I should call. In front of me, the driver's not saying anything. He's just driving, as if this is completely normal. If I didn't know better, I'd say he'd driven this road 100 times. But how does he know it's here? I wonder. This path isn't even on the GPS map. I say a couple more times that I'd like us to get back to the road, and he repeats that we'll get there eventually. I think we're driving in this thick wooded area for about 3 minutes before we finally turn onto a slightly wider paved stretch. A minute later, another turn brings us onto a full road with other cars and everything. Suddenly, I feel safer. I unclench my muscles, take my hand off the car door, and slowly let out my held breath. Meanwhile, the driver starts chuckling. He just says, "What a strange way to come. I'm surprised the GPS took us that way. It seemed like some kind of private road." I don't say anything to him because the Uber GPS didn't even have that trail on the screen. Still, I don't want to start an argument. This guy had seemed friendly at first, but now I'm not so sure. So I say nothing and sit there clutching my phone, just in case I still need to call for help. For the next 15 or so minutes, we drive in relative silence. He tries to ask me a couple of questions, but I'm not interested in conversation. I'm completely creeped out by this guy now, and all I want is to get out of the car as soon as possible. We eventually pull up outside my mom's house. I throw open the door and step out onto the sidewalk as fast as possible. I'm just starting to walk towards the porch when I hear the sound of a car window opening. Slowly, I turn around to see what this guy wants. He grins at me and asks if I want my stuff from the trunk. In all the stress, I'd completely forgotten about all my shopping. I stand there for a second, genuinely unsure what to do. On the one hand, I want my stuff. But on the other hand, what if this is some ploy to get me close to the car so he can grab me? I tell myself I'm being ridiculous and nod at him, then walk to the back of the car. He pops the trunk and I grab my bags and slam it shut. I don't breathe again until the car drives away from me and turns the corner. Slowly, I walk up the path to my mom's front door, trying not to convince myself that this was probably some misunderstanding or a genuine GPS glitch like he said. Except, all I can think about is the fact that this guy now knows exactly where I'm staying.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producer is Declan Roars. Audio engineering by Nathan Corson, Will Pritz, and Sean Rule Hoffman. Executive producer Bridget Coyne. Until next time, stay safe out there.
When you
you take a sip of an ice-cold Coke Zero Sugar, you know you're getting real Coca-Cola taste you love, and with zero sugar. It's so delicious, you can almost taste it with your ears. Hear those bubbles? Imagine them tingling on your tongue. Fizzy deliciousness. Listen to that cascading liquid. It's unmistakably tasty. All with zero sugar. Crisp, refreshing, and ice cold. Ah, Coke Zero Sugar. Real Coca-Cola taste. Zero sugar.